You reach into the water to grab the gold-flecked stones that you see in front of you. But, as your hand draws close, suddenly, a pair of icy cold eyes flash open, and a pair of fangs sink into your arm. As the pain flares, your blood begins to run as cold as ice. Today, we're going to be talking about the monster known as the Goldpebble in Pathfinder 2nd Edition on today's episode of The Local Disaster Tour Guide. Hello travelers and tourists, my name is Mark and I am the Local Disaster Tour Guide. That's right, I am a storyteller here to take full advantage of your aphitophobia. Welcome to a journey through the fantastic world of TTRPGs like Pathfinder and Starfinder, and welcome to Creature Feature Episode 2, where we're going to talk about the Goldpebble from Lost Omen's Shining Kingdom, a particularly dangerous ambush predator and snake that can make your blood turn into ice. Last year, I tried to start a new series called Creature Feature, and it didn't quite get off the ground as well as I was hoping it would, but it's an idea that I enjoy, so I'm taking another attempt at doing some Creature Features on this channel, a series where we take a look at different monsters in Pathfinder 2e, take a look at their abilities and what makes them interesting to encounter, talk about their lore, their history, and how storytellers might use them inside of a game. And then finally, we address what is the most important aspect of any creature discussion in a TTRPG, which is the moment that your players say, I want one. So if your players see this video and begin to ask for their very own Goldpebble, I'm going to give you some advice about how you can recreate it inside of the Pathfinder 2e rules. The TLDR of this video and this creature: the Goldpebble is a large aquatic beast that comes in at a creature level of 5. It's found on page 182 of Lost Omen's Shining Kingdom, and it is built to be an ambush predator that can serve to make aquatic encounters surprisingly challenging for your players. I will also be throwing a link to this creature on Archives of Nethys down in the video description, so if you want to read more, you can check it out there as well. But with all of that out of the way, let's get started. So in this video, I'm going to break our discussion of the Goldpebble into 4 rough sections. The first section will be the lore of the Goldpebble, a description of how this creature came to be. The second section will actually dive into the stats of the creature. I'm not going to go over every single stat that it has, but I am going to talk about some of its primary abilities that will show up if you encounter one of these creatures in a fight. In the third section, I'm going to give some suggestions to storytellers about how they can make use of a Goldpebble, and then finally at the end, we'll discuss I Want One, which is what to do if one of your players decides they need their very own pet Goldpebble, and some of the options in Pathfinder 2e that you can use to give them a companion that would be a reasonable facsimile of this creature. A couple of things up front. Number one, I apologize if my voice sounds a little bit weird. I'm not sure if the Gen Con crud is just finally catching up with me, or if allergy season is just showing up to punch me in the face. I'm not sure which of the two it is, but my voice is a little bit weird right now. I apologize if that throws off this video. The other thing I want to say is, this video is primarily intended for game masters who might be interested in making use of the Goldpebble inside of their game. In particular, sections 2 and 3 of this video are really geared towards game masters. The first section, lore, and the final section, I Want One, players can watch that without really spoiling too much, but if you are a player, I might suggest skipping over sections 2 and 3 of this video, just so that if one of these shows up in your game, you aren't spoiled about what's going to happen in the encounter before it actually comes to pass. So let's go ahead and dive into the lore of the Goldpebble. As already established, the Goldpebble is a large aquatic snake, and this snake, especially when it's coiled up, looks very similar to a pile of rocks with like flecks of gold and lines of gold kind of running through them. And as the Goldpebble is classified as a beast, not an animal, this is a creature that is intelligent enough to know that it looks like this and use its appearance in order to set up ambushes either for its prey or possibly for unwary adventurers. The Goldpebble can actually grow up to 12 feet long, and they can be very, very dangerous if they catch you off guard near their watery homes. But how did the Goldpebble come into being? The answer here is pretty simple. Alchemy went terribly, terribly wrong. The name of the alchemist that originally created the Goldpebble is, as far as I know, not recorded in any official Paizo publication. Goldpebbles did exist in first edition, so there may be a first edition resource somewhere that goes a little bit further in depth, but all we really know is an alchemist somewhere came up with a scheme to create an infinite source of gold. Their scheme was pretty simple and straightforward. Snakes naturally shed their skin, and if you had a snake that grew gold in its skin, when it would shed its skin, you could harvest it and then just slowly collect an infinite amount of gold from the creature. As a result, this alchemist worked to naturally imbue traits into this snake that would cause it to have veins of gold running through its body with the intention of harvesting. And initially the experiments went well. The Goldpebble did in fact show some signs of gold popping up as part of the creature's body. But no matter how big the Goldpebble grew, it never showed quite enough gold to actually serve as a viable source of wealth for the alchemist in question. Still, the alchemists knew they were onto something, so they redoubled their efforts threw more and more alchemical reagents at their creation, and strove to make the creature larger and potentially a source of more and more gold that the alchemist could then live off of. However, as the snake got larger and stronger, the amount of gold didn't increase, but its intelligence and lethality did. At some point, the Goldpebble developed a poison capable of freezing the blood of its victims, and the Goldpebble developed enough intelligence to turn against its master, kill its master, and escape into the wild. Now, Goldpebbles live mostly solitary lives, but serve as dangerous ambush predators for anyone who gets just a little bit too close. So that's a discussion of the lore of the Goldpebble. As I've said, if you are a player and you don't want to spoil the abilities of this creature, go ahead and look at the timestamps down in the video description, jump to the section labeled I Want One, and we'll talk about what you can do to get a Goldpebble themed companion for your character. The next couple of sessions, however, are going to be for Game Masters, as we're going to discuss both what the abilities of the Goldpebble are and how you can use them inside of the game. Alright, so Storytellers, as we've already established, the Goldpebble is a large creature level 5 beast that you can drop into your Pathfinder 2e games, and they come with the aquatic trait, which already tells you a little bit about where you can expect to find these creatures. Again, there will be a link to the creature's stat block in Archives of Nethys down in the video description, so if you want to get a deeper dive on what this creature can do, you can definitely check that out, but I do want to go over some of the abilities that the Goldpebble has, so that you kind of know how they're used in a fight. First up, the Goldpebble is going to come with a set of 3 abilities that are fairly predictable, and something that we see on several creatures inside of Pathfinder 2e. As an aquatic creature, they're going to come with a swim speed, that's not much of a surprise, and they also come with a sense called Wave Sense, which is an imprecise sense with a range of out to 60 feet. Finally, like many snake creatures inside of Pathfinder 2e, they're going to come with the Grab ability that they can use alongside some of their attacks. However, the 2 principal abilities that set the Goldpebble apart from other similar snakes inside of the game are Chilling Currents and Pebble Fang Poison. So first, let's talk about Pebble Fang Poison, because this introduces one of the big thematic differences, or I guess you could say thematic niches for this creature, which is the Goldpebble is something of an elemental opponent that players might have to deal with. Pebble Fang Poison is a poison, sort of like you'd expect on any sort of viper or similar venomous creature inside of the game, but in particular, Pebble Fang Poison deals cold damage rather than poison damage, and at the highest levels can inflict the drained status on victims of the poison. So this should clue you in that the Goldpebble is intended to drop the temperature in the fight very, very quickly and present a chilling challenge to your players. The next ability that it has is called Chilling Currents, which is a 2-action activity that creates a 30-foot emanation around the Goldpebble, causing any water in the area to have a significant and deadly drop in temperature. Any creature that is in the water or that enters the water during the next minute takes 2d6 cold damage, resisted with a Fortitude save. So essentially, players that are dealing with a Goldpebble are very quickly going to encounter some very serious cold damage, and if they're not prepared for chilling temperatures, they could suffer incredibly as a result. Naturally, the Goldpebble is going to have a resistance to cold damage, but it's also going to come with a weakness to electricity damage, which is thematically on point for an aquatic creature. One thing that I do want to point out about the Goldpebble is the Chilling Currents ability does not state that it only applies to water that the Goldpebble is actually in. As long as the water is within the range of that 30-foot emanation, the temperature will drop and the water will become dangerous. This means that even if the Goldpebble is not actually in the water whenever the players enter the water, it can still use this ability, and you can set up some scenarios where the sudden blast of freezing water might catch your players a little bit more off guard. So that's an overview of the Goldpebble's abilities. There is some discussion of another creature called a Gem Pebble, which is a similar snake that is known to haunt the minds of dwarves. They don't actually give you stats for the Gem Pebble, but it would be pretty easy to adapt to the stat block that is given in Shining Kingdoms, so it wouldn't be too hard to create the Gem Pebble variant. But that is an overlook at what the Goldpebble does. Now let's go ahead and talk about how to use it as a storyteller, and I really think there are two big ways that you can use a Goldpebble in your story. The first and most basic use of a Goldpebble is, well, as an ambush challenge for your players. The Goldpebble is intended to be an ambush predator, and you can imagine a variety of different circumstances where PCs might encounter one of these creatures as part of a larger adventure. I really enjoy the Goldpebble as a creature because it's the kind of thing that you can drop into almost any adventure and it'll make sense. As long as there is water somewhere, you've got a place that this creature can potentially show up, and because this creature naturally hunts by pretending to be a pile of gold-flecked rocks, this is something that you can use in a lot of different scenarios. It doesn't necessarily have to be part of a larger story. This can just be a naturally occurring challenge that shows up in your game. Now, Goldpebbles are very much aquatic creatures. They have the aquatic tag. So, like I said, you need some water somewhere in your adventure. But if you have a pond or a river, if it's occurring near the beach, if you have an old abandoned swimming pool for some reason, there are a lot of different places that this kind of creature can show up and potentially give your players a challenge. The more aquatic the environment, obviously the more dangerous this creature becomes, but again, this is just a very natural ambush-style creature that you can throw at your players and have a pretty interesting encounter. And as I mentioned, Shining Kingdoms does discuss the Gem Pebble variant. We don't have specific stats on that creature, but if you want to create a version that's not necessarily aquatic in nature, the Gem Pebble variant could be perfect for that kind of role. So the first story beat for using a Goldpebble is just as an ambush that your players have to deal with. However, the second option, and this is one that I think could be a lot of fun, could be playing off of the alchemy backstory of the Goldpebble. In the lore of these creatures, they were developed by an alchemist who was trying to create an infinite source of gold. Well, who's to say that there aren't some other alchemists who might be trying to finish those experiments? Maybe there are some alchemists who are trying to recreate the gold pebbles, maybe there are some alchemists who are trying to capture some gold pebbles, or maybe there are some alchemists who are trying to do some experiments on some gold pebbles, or as a final option, maybe there's an alchemist who wants to harvest some gold pebbles for some experiments of their own. The alchemical backstory of this creature creates a lot of potential plot hooks that could easily rope your PCs in. Has an alchemist gone missing under mysterious circumstances? Or is an alchemist attempting to hire the PCs to hunt down a strange creature that they need for some reagents? Or do you have an alchemist in your party who might be interested in continuing the experiments themselves? The built-in alchemical lore of this creature, I think, leaves a lot of plot hooks dangling that a storyteller can definitely make use of, especially if you want the gold pebble to be a centerpiece of a particular story arc. So that's a look at how you can use gold pebbles in a story, but as any experienced game master knows, the minute you drop any kind of creature into your game, there's going to be at least one player at your table who is naturally saying, I want one. So, what do you do if you have a player who wants a gold pebble of their very own? 1. Question their sanity because they want a snake that turns people's blood into ice. This is a bad idea, but it's not like that's actually stopped any players before, so let's talk about how you could give players a gold pebble of their very own. Now, the first thing to discuss is summoning magic in Pathfinder 2e. The gold pebble has the beast trait, and there are no spells in Pathfinder 2e that directly allow you to summon a beast. I did find an old Reddit thread that Mark Seifter had commented on, where Paizo kind of debated whether or not they wanted creatures with the beast trait to be summonable. I think creatures like hydras and stuff like that really make that sort of summoning spell kind of a questionable line. Ultimately, Paizo has never released a spell that allows players to summon beasts into a fight, so there's no explicit spell that's going to let your players do this. Now, the gold pebble is pretty close to an animal, and I don't feel like the gold pebble particularly breaks the game in any way. Like some of the concerns that you might see for creatures like hydras, I don't think that you have that with a gold pebble. So if you have a player who uses summoning magic, and you just want to create a variant of the summon animal spell, a 5th rank version of the summon animal spell would probably be appropriate to summon this creature. As a storyteller, you might need to add some kind of special item or action that players need to do in order to create this variant. Maybe a player needs to sacrifice a gold coin as part of summoning the gold pebble into battle. I don't think that's necessarily explicitly necessary, but it's something you might consider if you're really concerned about keeping to the baseline balance assumptions of Pathfinder 2e. If you want to go the summon route, that's probably what I would do. If your players are looking for a more long-term companion, the biggest resource I can point you towards is the Elemental Allies section found on page 38 of Rage of Elements. This section of Rage of Elements actually has rules for elemental eidolons, animal companions, and familiars. So you could probably use these rules to build an elemental creature that just happens to look like a snake, and that would play a pretty good impression of a gold pebble, but there are some other options you can look into if you don't want to go for a pure elemental creature. As noted previously, the gold pebble is a beast that just happens to turn people's blood into ice. So if you want to go more of the beast route, there are some things you can do to get a beast eidolon or animal companion, and then add some elemental abilities on top of that to give you the impression of the gold pebble that you're really wanting. The easy one here would be the summoner with the beast eidolon. You would just pick the beast eidolon and describe it as a snake, pretty straightforward there. And there are several eidolon abilities that can give your eidolon elemental damage. Pick cold damage and congratulations, you're done. There's also an Eidolon ability called Bloodletting Claws that you could turn into Bloodletting Fangs to add some bleed damage to the attacks of your Eidolon, and that might be a way to do a pretty solid impression of Pebble Fang Poison if you so desire. Where it would get a little bit more complex is if you take a look at the animal companion options. There are a lot more animal companions, but they aren't as necessarily on point as the Beast Eidolon can be for the Summoner. There is a snake animal companion, and I do think that is the appropriate starting point if you want to do a Goldpebble. I think you would take the snake animal companion. The first thing you might want to do is check with your Game Master about switching out some of the base abilities of the snake animal companion. The snake animal companion can start with a constrict ability, but what you might talk to your Game Master about is trading out the constrict ability for the scorpion animal companion's poison ability instead. Assuming your Game Master is open to that, that could play a reasonable early impression of Pebble Fang Poison, and then in the book Lost Omen Legends, there are a set of animal companion options called Genie Touched Animal Companions and the Deep Dive Specialty that you can take as higher level options for your animal companion. Obviously you would want to reflavor those to be a little more on brand to what the Goldpebble does, but those could be some options that could help you reflect the flavor of the Goldpebble if you wanted one as a companion inside of the game. So that is a quick look at the Goldpebble in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, its lore, its abilities, how to use it inside a game, and how to respond when your players inevitably say, "I want one." But the time has come to turn the conversation over to you. What are your thoughts about the Goldpebble in Pathfinder 2e? How would you use it in a story? And do you have any recommendations for what a player could do if they wanted one as a companion? Jump down to the comments section and let me know. And let me know what some other great creatures to feature in this series might be. My goal is for this series to serve as an introduction to interesting creatures that might show up in some Pathfinder 2e campaigns. I want to help highlight some of the fun stuff that Paizo has put out there, so I would love to hear your suggestions. While you're down in the comments section, don't forget to do all the other stuff that helps to support this channel. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. You can check out my free Discord and my Patreon. All of those links will be in the video description. But, as always, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for being part of the conversation. Have a wonderful day.